Separated by the Salish Sea, connected by the Rio Graps in BC. This is the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast with Aaron Schultz and Corey Ace Trelaw.
It's not the big two, but hopefully I'll do. It's the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast. It's Aaron Schultz. Unfortunately, without Corey Ace Trelaw, take you behind the curtains. We're recording this on, I'm so used to saying we. I'm recording this here on Sunday, March 29th. Today is Ace's birthday, and I didn't wish him a happy birthday on Facebook because I figured this would be a nice spot. Happy birthday, Ace. Happy 31st birthday. And if you, the listener and the viewer, find Ace at any point during your day of business, give him some belated birthday bumps for me. Give him 31 stiff chops. Maybe hit him with a snapmare. Then work his arm. Put him in a headlock. And then start feeding and bumping for him. And then honestly, just get to your finish. Honestly, just have like a 2-star match with Ace if you just run into him on the street or something for me as a belated birthday. But yeah, so we sort of realized at this point, Sunday, that Ace was going to be celebrating his birthday. And then we couldn't record early on the Saturday because he was boots on the ground for VIPW in Nanaimo, and he'll have a report from there, I suppose. It was a busy day for our guy. A busy weekend for our guy. And we unfortunately did not realize how busy he would be, how packed his schedule would be without realizing, well, we realized it would be too late. So with his blessing, he allowed me to record solo here today. Tried to make it work out throughout the rest of the week. For example, he's got work and school all day on the Monday. Tuesday night doesn't work out because I'm doing my running training. There's an event in Kamloops here called Boogie the Bridge. It's sort of like a running event that has everything from 1K to power walking all the way to half marathons. I did a 10K last year, was training to do a 10K again this year. Funny enough, I'm actually not going to be here for the race itself because of being outside of town that weekend. One of my best friends from Alberta is coming in to visit, and then we're going to Vancouver to see some of our other friends from Nanaimo making the trip. Gonna see a Vancouver Canadians game, spend the night, have a great time. So unfortunately, I'll be driving back to Kamloops during that race, so I won't be here for that, but I'm still continuing with my training because unlike John Cena, I'm not giving up. And so that's what I'm going to be doing on Tuesday, and then Wednesday after AEW Dynamite, I'll be going with my cousins. Our Kamloops Blazers are in the first round of the WHL playoffs. We're going to that game 4, I believe, on Wednesday. We might be seeing our Blazers get swept, but still supporting them until the bitter end. And then by the time Thursday comes, there's like too much for us to catch up on. I think I mentioned to Ace that we would need to catch up on like 3 weeks of AEW TV afterwards. So with his blessing, he gave me the green light to do a solo show here on the Sunday, and do not expect this often because we're both of the same mindset that we still like the dynamic of a duo talking and doing the show. I reached out to a coworker who also has a good pulse on the wrestling business and is a huge fan. Unfortunately, the timing just did not work out. So yeah, anytime one of us cannot be on the show, we'll either bank a show that's not time sensitive, maybe have an interview, at the very least have like 2 co-hosts as well, so we're not just spouting off into the, well, I was gonna say spout off into the open space, but we got you, our dear listener and viewer. So yeah, this is a very rare occasion. We do like the 2-person dynamic. It's like if you're listening to a sports talk show or whatever, and you always have a guest host come in whenever someone's away on vacation. We're going to follow that spirit here on the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast. So that's the situation. I'm basically going to be covering the news of the week, give a preview of what's to come on the independent wrestling scene here in BC, talk about what happened on WWE TV. Would rather not, but we'll do that. talk about everything we missed on AEW over the last 2 weeks. We got new matches announced for AEW Dynasty in Vancouver on Sunday, April 12th, and then WrestleMania weekend the week after that. So this is like a break glass in case of emergency kind of podcast to essentially make sure that we're not doing like a marathon recording session. And I guess on that note too, more times often than not over the next couple of weeks, a couple of months here, Ace and I will be doing 2 shows a week instead of one. Instead of the one marathon session, we're hoping to break these up. Maybe record on a Thursday and then a Sunday as his schedule starts to free up a little bit more as he finishes. He's gonna kill me for this. I think it's his second year of university. As soon as he wraps that up, we'll have more availability during the weeknights. So we'll be back here to talk about the news of the week, along with Monday Night Raw, Wednesday Night Dynamite on Thursday, right ahead of the holiday long weekend, right ahead of Good Friday. And then we'll be back here on the Sunday to talk everything Friday Night SmackDown, Saturday Night Collision, and the rest of the news of the week as well. So expect that schedule going forward. Now going ahead to what we actually like to talk about. Well, actually, I guess we do like to talk about our lore as well, but wrestling is the point of this podcast. So, the news of the week. Well, I guess the lead story here in Canada, at the very least. If you're an American homie or a worldwide listener, sorry, but this is we're separated by the Salish Sea here in BC, but we're connected by the real Graps in BC. This isn't a BC story, but is a huge story for Canadian professional wrestling, as it appears we'll have a fourth nationally televised wrestling promotion airing TV shows. Over the weekend, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, based in Windsor, Ontario, announced they have a media rights deal with TSN, one of the main sports networks in Canada. It was during, well, I guess we should say what the show is all about. So, Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling, or in this case, MLP for short. MLP Mayhem will air on TSN starting this July 2026. TV tapings are all already scheduled to take place in Windsor, Ontario. This was announced during MLP's pair of shows over the weekend. They had a co-promoted show with Ring of Honor, which is also owned by AW owner Tony Khan. So they had a pair of shows over the weekend, and that's where they made the big announcement that I guess MLP Mayhem is coming to TSN in July. TV tapings are already scheduled. The background with MLP is it's owned by Scott D'Amore, who's a longtime Canadian professional wrestler, promoter, and writer. I would say he's probably best known as being an on-screen talent, a manager, authority figure, and also behind the scenes being the head of creative and then eventually the president for Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, TNA for short. So he was there for a couple of years leading up to it when Impact Wrestling, as it was then called, and then became TNA again in early 2024. At around that time, Scott D'Amore was let go as head of creative and the president of TNA. A few months later, Scott D'Amore announced the launch of MLP, which is the spiritual successor of Maple Leaf Wrestling, territory affiliated with the National Wrestling Alliance. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, it was based in Toronto, so MLP is the spiritual successor to that. And they've had some pay-per-view events that have aired on Triller over the last couple of years. They now have a partnership with CMLL, Lucha Libre in Mexico, and then Ring of Honor, as mentioned. They have had AEW talent on, like Canadian AEW talents like Speedball Mike Bailey and Josh Alexander. And they essentially operate like a super independent promotion over the last couple of years, like not really having a TV deal, but broadcasting some pay-per-view events, having some really big names on their shows. And yeah, this is an interesting time because, I mean, there's a lot of wrestling out there. I don't think this exists if Scott D'Amore, for example, is still with TNA, because TNA, after they had terminated the contract of Scott D'Amore, you know, TNA is owned by Anthem Sports and Entertainment, which is a Canadian company. Technically, TNA is Canadian content, and Canadian content's basically the minimum amount of, as mentioned, Canadian content required, whether it's written or produced by a Canadian, that's required by the CRTC here in Canada. So when you see all those TNA shows on Sportsnet, that's Canadian content because even though they tape a lot of their shows in the United States, Anthem is a Canadian company, so that counts as Canadian content. But this very much is a Canadian company because TNA doesn't identify itself as a Canadian company. MLP in this instance is. And of course, over the last 2 years since after TNA dismissed, or I shouldn't say dismissed, terminated the contract of Scott D'Amore, they've sort of gone their own way. Uh, they've partnered with WWE, and in this case, you've seen Joe Hendry at WrestleMania and saying, "Oh, look at the TNA World Champion being on WrestleMania," but always forgetting that he got jabronied and beaten in 2 or 3 minutes by Randy Orton. They've had some NXT talents pop up on TNA, like famously Trick Williams was like the TNA World Champion for a good chunk of 2025. So that's kind of where TNA decided to make its bed, and you can't say it's been too bad for them because in terms of interest and ticket sales, it's probably the most successful they've been since well over a decade ago when they were just staring at death's door, where they almost went out of business. So with that, and also having a new TV deal on AMC in the US and then being on Sportsnet in Canada, it's gone pretty well. But you could tell that partnering with WWE, in my opinion, probably not what Scott D'Amore envisioned, because there's been a history of pro wrestling promotions partnering with WWE and kind of being sucked up like a vampire would suck out the blood of their victim. Uh, Most recently, the independent promotions in the United Kingdom have been feeling that after NXT UK kind of absorbed a lot of the talents on that scene there. So I think maybe this MLP is going to be the vision of what Scott D'Amore envisioned with TNA if he were still around there today. And here's the thing, Scott D'Amore is more successful than I am, so he shouldn't be taking booking advice from me. He shouldn't really be taking business advice from me. Like, to my understanding, he and his family are very well off. Like, they own like a very successful construction company in Windsor, Ontario. So I'll just say what I want as a fan. So there's three main things I want to get across if Scott D'Amore happens to listen to this podcast. One, be different, be uniquely you, because how do I say this? Don't be like WWE. You know how you always say, "Oh, WWE is the best." Be more like WWE. They're the most successful. Here's the thing about WWE. There's more WWE available than WWE fans even know what to do with. Outside of Monday Night Raw, NXT on Tuesdays, and Friday Night SmackDown during the week, there's pay-per-view events that happen every couple of weekends or so. That doesn't even get into like WWE Evolve on Tubi. It doesn't talk about WWE Main Event. It doesn't talk about AAA, which is basically just WWE in Mexico that airs on YouTube. There's so much of it. There's more than they know what to do with. So nobody can do WWE better than WWE. So if fans really want all the WWE they can handle, they're being provided that. And in terms of like trying to be a work rate company, top to bottom, AEW has the best wrestling roster in the world, and it through Ring of Honor at the very least. Tony Khan is partnering with MLB, so you should have some help getting some talent there. And yeah, just be you. I mean, I'll take a look at TNA, for example, when talking about like Canadian companies. TNA is an old show written by older people, and I'm not talking about like going to the days of the 70s or 80s. It reminds me a little bit of the car crash kind of TV we saw in the late 90s, or just the worst parts of the ruthless aggression era in the 2000s. So I don't know. TNA just feels like a throwback in the worst ways. So MLP, be different. Give these fans an alternative. And one of the ways I think they can be an alternative, and this is my second point, feature Canadian talent that would not be featured otherwise. You know, be a Canadian company. You know how there's like youth national programs in like hockey and soccer and basketball. Like, you have like the World U17 championships in hockey or like the World Junior Championships. Like, just try, maybe you can find a way to be, you can stand out in Canada by, of course, like having great wrestling, but you can, or maybe just a different presentation, but you can have all these talented Canadian wrestlers from coast to coast to coast that may not be featured on TV otherwise, who may have a platform. And, if they're working with good talents, like say Konosuke Takeshita or Speedball Mike Bailey or Josh Alexander or all these great talents who have come into MLP already, if these Canadian talents who wouldn't be on TV otherwise are working with these great guys, they should get even better too. So don't, well, you're identifying yourself as MLP, a Canadian professional wrestling company. Let's feature our Canadian talents. And if you're taping your TV, if these shows aren't going to be live, if something looks a little bit rough, you can just maybe use a different camera angle or a different, or just edit it out, So let the kids play, let the Canadian talent play. And third, and finally, come out west. I know you're based in Windsor. I believe that MLP has done a couple of has at least done one show in Laval, Quebec. But come out west. We won't bite. I know TNA, I think it was last summer, they did a pair of shows in Edmonton. I think they got 2,000 fans plus per at the Expo Center in Edmonton. But come over to BC too. We got enough venues, we got enough hockey rinks, we have enough theaters, etc., etc. So MLP, don't just plant your flags in Ontario. Come out west too. Tour from coast to coast to coast. This is a great wrestling nation, and we could really use a great Canadian wrestling company. So we'll see what happens with MLP Mayhem once it eventually airs on TSN. And I guess that's the thing too. I don't know if it's on the TV channels or if it's going to be on the TSN app or Crave or what the situation is. I mean, haven't seen a updated news release from Bell Media since the announcement was made by MLP. However, let's just say if they are on one of the 5 TSN TV channels, I'll be doing my best to try and watch those first couple of weeks at the very least. If it's just a carbon copy of, say, what you would see on TNA wrestling, may lose interest. But if you're trying to be different, trying to be uniquely you, and then you're trying to feature Canadian talent who otherwise wouldn't be featured, 2 thumbs up. I'll follow along. So best of luck to Scott D'Amore and Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling as they begin this new venture into the televised professional wrestling world. Now, going from national, and I guess in a sense from the center of the universe in Ontario, I kid, let's go to all the great independent professional wrestling we're seeing in our province in beautiful BC. Starting in the interior with Thrash Wrestling Gut Check taking place Friday, April 10th at 7 o'clock p.m. at the SASCU Recreation Center in Salmon Arm, BC. The day after, Saturday, April 11th, 7 p.m., Thrash Wrestling No Home for Jabronis. What a great name. Taking place at the Schubert Center in Vernon, BC. That's a 7 o'clock start on Saturday, April 11th. The following week, Friday, April 17th at 7 p.m., Thrash Wrestling Skullduggery taking place at 801 Railway Street in Nelson, BC, far into the interior. The week after that, Thrash Wrestling Cape Town Contra 3 taking place at Rutland Arena in Kelowna, Friday, April 24th at 7 p.m., featuring former WWE star, former TNA star, Brian Kendrick. And as first reported on Cup Check Wrestling, Thrash Wrestling is coming back to Kamloops with, I can't get over this name, but I'll get back to that. Thrash Wrestling, the icing on the cake, taking place Friday, May 1st at 7 p.m. from Moccasin Square Gardens on the Kamloops Reserve. That's Friday, May 1st at 7 p.m. So the name of this, the icing on the cake. As Ace and I mentioned last week, this is taking place on my birthday. I'm not a big birthday fan. I was planning not to do anything, but this show is taking place on my birthday, and what should the name be but the icing on the cake? I swear to God, that's a rib on me. And an extra note for this one, Thrash Wrestling Fire on the Lake, taking place Saturday, May 2nd at 7:30 p.m. from the Logan Lake Recreation Center in Logan Lake. So the Logan Lake Firefighters are hosting the 2026 VFABC Spring Seminar. And as part of this weekend, Thrash Wrestling is going to be taking place at the Logan Lake Rec Center at 7:30 p.m. They note that there is limited public tickets because they're available at the door. I guess most of the firefighters will be attending this show, so entry is limited. There's limited public tickets. They'll be available at the door. There's no pre-sales or reservation. First come, first served. That's Saturday, May 2nd, Fire on the Lake at Logan Lake. Going to VIPW now on Vancouver Island. We've got VIPW at the Cowix Grounds, Mellor Hall in Duncan, BC. That's Saturday, April 25th at 6:30 p.m. And VIPW's back in Nanaimo at the Centennial Building on Saturday, May 23rd at 6:30 p.m. VIPW, they're just at the Centennial Arena, I believe, just over the weekend. I think I got the venue right. Either way, Ace was there, for example. It looked like he had a great time. It looked like hundreds of people had a great time at VIPW in Nanaimo. It was packed as always. So if you missed it over the weekend, if you, the wrestling fan on Vancouver Island, missed VIPW in Nanaimo over the weekend, they'll be back Saturday, May 23rd, 6:30 p.m. at the Centennial Building. And if you can't make it for that show, the granddaddy of them all for VIPW is taking place a month later. WrestleFest 3, taking place at the Frank Crane Arena in Nanaimo, Friday, June 19th at 6:30 p.m. The main event, tables, ladders, and chairs. Oh my! An interpromotional tables, ladders, and chairs match will be the main event of WrestleFest 3 at the Frank Crane Arena in Nanaimo, Friday, June 19th at 6:30 p.m. Going to the mainland, Boom Pro Wrestling. Well, I guess they're based on the Lower Mainland, but they're starting this tour on the Sunshine Coast. Boom Pro Wrestling in Powell River at the Dwight Hall, Saturday, April 4th from 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Tickets are still available. The week afterwards, Boom Pro Wrestling Kids League Night 7, Saturday, April 11th from 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. That's at St. James Community Square in Vancouver. And then 2 weeks after that, they are back at home base, the Commercial Drive Legion, 3rd floor at 2205 Commercial Drive in Vancouver. It's the Road to the Commodore on Friday, April 24th from 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And then another show the day afterwards, Road to the Commodore, Twin Fang, Saturday, April 25th at 8 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Both of those shows, the Commercial Drive Legion, 3rd floor. And you may have heard the name Road to the Commodore. Here's what's happening. Boom Pro Wrestling, the biggest one, taking place Saturday, July 25th at the Commodore Ballroom. There's a pre-sale going on right now. I don't have the code in front of me by any chance, unfortunately, I should say. I haven't had the privilege of going to see a wrestling show at the Commodore Ballroom. I've heard it's an incredible venue for pro wrestling. We'll try and make this show to avenge all the shows I've missed there over previous years. But if you're in the Vancouver area, Saturday, July 25th, Boom Pro Wrestling, the biggest one at the Commodore Ballroom, should be a hell of a time. Elsewhere in the Lower Mainland, Big West Wrestling, Slash and Burn, taking place Saturday, May 16th at Sullivan's Community Association in Surrey, BC. Going up north, Primetime Wrestling has a pair of shows taking place at the Prince George Civic Center Friday, May 15th at 5:45 p.m. and then Saturday, May 16th, also at 5:45 p.m. Both those shows, Primetime Pro Wrestling at the Prince George Civic Center. Going back to the Lower Mainland, Apex Wrestling presents Armageddon Friday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. from Hastings Racecourse and Casino. That's a 7 o'clock start. And then Mystery Pro Wrestling live from Vancouver for the first time on Saturday, April 11th at 2 p.m. from Great Canadian Hastings Racecourse and Casino, featuring AW star Evil Uno and I believe still former WWE NXT star, former New Japan Pro Wrestling star, and current Pro Wrestling Noah star, Kenta should be at that show. Mystery Wrestling from Great Canadian Hastings Racecourse and Casino in Vancouver, Saturday, April 11th, the day before AEW Dynasty, a pay-per-view event at the Rogers Arena, Sunday, April 12th. According to our friends at WrestleTix, just surpassed the 7,000 tickets distributed mark earlier today. So with 2 weeks to go, they pretty much opened up as much as the lower bowl that they could. I imagine this upper bowl will be getting released ASAP, probably by the time maybe this podcast goes to air. So if you're looking for cheaper tickets to AEW Dynasty in Vancouver, Sunday, April 12th, from the Rogers Arena, stay tuned to that Ticketmaster map. And then finally, Overdrive Wrestling, taking place at the Limelight Theater in Williams Lake, BC, April 18th. Tickets $25 in advance, $30 at the door. Doors open at 6. The show starts at 7 o'clock. Actually, there's 2 more shows, I should say. Tapped Wrestling Federation presents Tapped Out, Saturday, April 4th at 7 p.m. from 3012 Murray Street in Port Moody, BC. And going further down the road, Tapped Wrestling Federation Bash at the Row at 3012 Murray Street, Saturday, July 4th at 7 p.m. The indies are still going crazy in BC right now, man. Here we go. Now let's get to other wrestling news. AEW, Dynasty, of course, taking place in Vancouver, BC. We have 3 matches announced. The presumed main event, Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF, defending the AEW Men's World Championship. I got a big shitting grin on my face. Against Kenny Omega. He defeated Swerve Strickland on this last week's Dynamite to become the #1 contender to face MJF for the AEW Men's World Championship at Dynasty, presumably in the main event. So the previous week, Kenny Omega challenged Swerve Strickland because AEW kind of, told the story after the fact, but they said Swerve was the #1 contender after defeating Brody Kane at the AEW Revolution pay-per-view. Kenny was challenging Swerve for the #1 contendership. Of course, Swerve took out Kenny a month previously, wrote him off TV because Kenny was at the Capcom Cup event in Japan. So Swerve, the previous week's Dynamite, responded that if you want me to put my #1 contendership on the line, you put up your executive vice president status. Because Kenny is still an EVP at AEW in storyline, even though he never really abused his power like the Young Bucks did when the Young Bucks were heels for the last 2 or so years. So they had a really good match in Minnesota on this last week's Dynamite. Kenny with the win. It wasn't as good as their match about a month or so ago in Sacramento. I was nervous for this because for as long as Cup Chuck Wrestling has existed, this is the main event I wanted. I thought Kenny Omega challenging for the AEW Men's World Championship in Canada, one of the greatest wrestlers this country has ever produced, maybe the greatest. Kenny Omega, he is in that debate, whether it's like Bret Hart or Chris Jericho or Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, etc., etc. Kenny Omega is in that debate. That's my honest opinion. So to have this match with this Canadian star in Canada, I thought this is the layup of all layups to make for the main event of AEW Dynasty. I was nervous because even if Kenny were to win, this week's Dynamite is in Winnipeg, the hometown of Kenny Omega. So I was worried even if he would win, he would challenge for the championship in Winnipeg on Dynamite. And they've been hinting at Darby Allin challenging for the championship, Kyle Fletcher recently. We'll get to both of those in a little bit. But they are not doing that. They're having the contract signing on Dynamite in Winnipeg. And then Kenny's just in a trios match. We'll get to that in a little bit. So thankfully, MJF and Kenny Omega for the AW Men's World Championship at Dynasty. MJF came out on Dynamite this last week, was sort of bragging that Hangman Adam Page will never. I can't do the voice. He basically did the Chris Jericho never ever, but said the ever over and over and over again. So hinting that Hangman Adam Page, after losing the Texas Death Match at AW Revolution, will never challenge for the AW Men's World Championship ever again, basically saying he's going to break this step. And very quickly on the Hangman, if he has to break the step, and I think that's what AW is hinting, I hope it's not because he has to turn heel. I hope that there's a situation where the Hangman does not want to break that stipulation, but the talents and the fans, because of the fans, we'll save that rant for WWE. I hope that Hangman is encouraged to break his step for the greater good, and he doesn't turn heel. But basically, MJF is bragging that Hangman will never challenge for the championship again. Kenny Omega comes out, says MJF's the devil, and that Kenny was always called the god of pro wrestling. So he said, maybe the god needs to take on the devil. And so, yep, they're having this match at Dynasty. These two had a brilliant match in late 2023. MJF's shoulder was held by thoughts and prayers. He went for surgery, I think, like a month later. And Kenny Omega was like a month or two away from almost dying of diverticulitis. And they had a brilliant match for the AW Men's World Championship during MJF's first reign, all the way back in 2023. If they're both healthy and on pay-per-view with more time, this should be a brilliant main event, and I cannot wait. Two big thumbs up for that. Second big match, Jon Moxley, the AW Continental Champion, taking on Will Ospreay. I believe this is still a non-title match, so kind of odd. But they've done a pretty good job building this match already. The previous week's episode of AW Dynamite, Will Ospreay had a back-and-forth match with Blake Christian. Pretty good. I understand the critiques of Will Ospreay's the star and Blake Christian never wins, so why are you having this back and forth match? Will Ospreay did just come back from neck surgery, though. Let's give him some reps to try and get back into proper ring shape before this big match with, Jon Moxley here on the AW Dynasty pay-per-view event. So Ospreay comes out on the previous week's Dynamite. Wheeler Yuta and Jon Moxley are coming through the crowd. Ospreay attacks them and then is eventually cut off by Pac. And then as both men are kind of being escorted to the back and the next segment begins, I think it's the Bang Bang Gang is taking on Jon Moxley and Wheeler Yuta in a tag team match right after this segment. But as that transition's happening, Will Ospreay storms the stage to the side of the stage to attack Pac. And so that match is set up for this week's Dynamite in Winnipeg. So that should be a pretty good show. And both Moxley and Ospreay had really good promos, backstage segments on TV this week. Will Ospreay said that he'll never forgive Jon Moxley for what he did to him. So in storyline, Will Ospreay had a broken neck that he needed surgery on going into the AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling pay-per-view event, Forbidden Door in London, England. Will Ospreay's from England. And as a way to write him off TV so he could get his neck surgery, the main event was a 5 versus 5 unsanctioned steel cage match. And after Ospreay's team had won, Jon Moxley had broken Will Ospreay's neck even further in storyline. Pillmanized his neck, had a steel chair wrapped around his neck, stomped on it. That's what Pillmanizing is. And that was like a month after I think he did that at the AEW All In pay-per-view in Texas at Globe Life Field, where the storyline is AEW is trying to unite together to get this world championship off Jon Moxley when the Hangman is challenging him in a Texas death match. So there's a lot of history here, and Will Ospreay says he'll never forgive John Moxley doing that to him in front of his son, his wife, and his mom. And he says a very naughty word. And so they're going to have a great match at Dynasty. And then John Moxley on this last Saturday's Collision said, "You had a broken neck going into a steel cage match. What did you expect?" So I'm looking forward to this. About John Moxley in general, not really liking the way his character's kind of been leaning back and forth, you know? I mean, I know he seems to be a fan of the shades of gray, like, oh, there's no pure good guy or no pure bad guy. However, after being the heel to end all heels over the last year and change, and then turning babyface during the Continental Classic, overcoming the odds after giving up for a couple of months, like tapping out to Hangman Adam Page and tapping out to Kyle O'Reilly twice, he did not give up during the Continental Classic and won the title. And then he kind of did this rah AEW promo, turned babyface, and he and his Death Riders are babyfaces against the Don Callis family, while Wheeler Yuta's still a heel going up against Orange Cassidy and Tony Storm. So that's still happening. Yep, and now John Moxley, of course, was just the heel for that brief program with Konosuke Takeshita going into AEW Revolution. And now he's just a straight up heel against Will Ospreay here. So, in a vacuum, I like this storyline quite a bit, but let's let's firmly have something for John Moxley. Let's just have him a babyface or heel. None of this switching back and forth. It's easier for the viewer. And then the third big match for AEW Dynasty, FTR are defending the AEW Men's World Championships against Adam Copeland and Christian Cage, the former Edge and Christian in WWE. So after the previous week's Dynamite, the Young Bucks, I forget who their partner was, but they won a trios match. I think it was them and Jack Perry defeating Kazuchika Okada and two members of the Don Callis family, Trent Beretta and Rocky Romero. The Young Bucks said that they were disappointed that they lost at Revolution. Cope and Cage come out, and I love both these men. I love Adam Copeland especially. I think as a guy who was a huge star in WWE, as Edge coming into AEW and trying his best, even after breaking his leg back in 2024. The way that they went about it, so it's FTR and Cope and Cage at Dynasty. That makes sense. The famous Canadian duo challenging for the tag team championships in Canada makes a lot of sense. Cope kind of saying, hey, that match, saying to the Young Bucks, that match you had at Revolution was one of the best matches I've ever seen. But of course, they got their shot. I didn't like that because the Young Bucks are better than Edge and Christian ever were. You know, as a tag team and an impact on the wrestling industry, the Young Bucks have had more of an impact than Edge and Christian. I know Edge and Christian were part of the tables, ladders, and chairs match in WWF. AEW exists mostly because of the Young Bucks' success on the independent scene and just how they were able to get themselves ludicrously over while in Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling and being able to sell so much merchandise and getting their t-shirts t-shirts available for sale at Hot Topic. If you want to say, oh, Edge was a main eventer in WWE, yeah, in singles action, sure. You could say Edge and Christian could be bigger stars as singles competitors than the Young Bucks, but as a duo in the tag team division, and maybe just in general, the Young Bucks are the bigger stars. So I didn't like that way of big leaguing them, like kind of brushing their hair a little bit, you know? But anyways, so it's FTR taking on Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. Both these guys have had great promos just this last week on Dynamite. It's a backstage segment. Christian talks about how Cope and Cage beat FTR at AW All Out Toronto, and afterwards they hit Adam Copeland's wife, Beth, the former Beth Phoenix in WWE, hit her with a spike pile driver, and Christian says, but worst of all, you did that to me. And then Adam Copeland says, what an asshole. And that's what I kind of like. As much as I didn't like the whole process of Edge and Christian reuniting in AEW. I do like how Christian's character, his same asshole character in AEW that got him kind of over, is still persistent. Like, okay, if there wasn't the big coming to light moment for Christian, at least he's still an asshole. And it's just a matter of convenience of him and Edge working together just to win the tag team championships and in storyline get bigger paydays because they are champions. So that was good. Uh, Adam Copeland delivers a great promo talking about how back in 2009, like, of course, he and Beth, I believe they were selling in Asheville, North Carolina at the time, which is the home of FTR, and how Cash Wheeler came up to him in the gym saying, "Hey, I'm a wrestler too. Here's my stuff." And how they bonded together. I mean, I think Ace and I may have talked about this, but FTR, like Cash Wheeler, helped Edge get back into ring shape after Edge had missed 9 years uh, with following a broken neck where Edge thought his career was over. Like Cash Wheeler was a big part of making sure he could get back into ring shape, and how our kids played with each other. You've had my wife's cooking, and you stayed at our house, and that Cope is just going to beat them up. And then FTR comes out and says, well, Cash says, "I don't care about your wife or your stupid kids." And then Dax said, "If that's what I'm going to do to your wife, imagine what we'll do to you." So we got some heat for this match too. I mean, I like the match at All Out Toronto. I can understand the critiques that it got maybe too cute, like Adam Copeland, who, of course, as Edge in WWE, was one of John Cena's biggest rivals in WWE. They were never going to interact during John Cena's retirement tour last year, so Adam Copeland did the John Cena comeback spot, the "you can't see me" and the five knuckle shuffle and the attitude adjustment. And it's supposed to be during a grudge match, so I understand how it may have been a little bit too cute then. As good of a match it was, but I don't know. I feel like this one will be a little bit more heated, so hopefully, not saying that they all have to bleed or whatnot, but make this feel like a grudge match while being a match for the titles. So, three big matches for AEW Dynasty in Vancouver at over 7,000 tickets distributed. Still some answers 2 weeks out. Like, for example, where's the Hangman? I'm okay with the Hangman not being on TV because, you know, he can never challenge for the AEW Men's World Championship again. And he lost his Texas Death Match. So not only recovering from the physical impacts of that, what about the emotional labor that comes with that too? But even if he never said anything, he just showed Hangman being stretchered out or walking into the sunset. I don't know. I would have liked a little bit of clarity there. What's going to happen with Swerve Strickland and Brody King? Brody King was not on Dynamite this last week. Swerve lost to Kenny Omega for the number one contendership. So there's some more questions there. There's also some questions for well, I have some questions for the AEW women's scene. If Dynasty wasn't in Vancouver, this probably would have been the lead story from AEW this week. Timeless Tony Storm, the biggest star in the women's division, arguably the biggest star that they have in the company, is out for the year. And this was announced, not this last week, but the previous week's Dynamite on the day of during the show. So this was as breaking as possible because it was still supposed to be Tony Storm taking on Marina Shafir in a no holds barred match. And then it was announced that Mina Shirakawa would be taking place and that Tony Storm was found injured. And the way they shot this was they showed that Tony Storm was laid out, bleeding from the head. There's all these clues at the scene of the crime, for lack of a better term, of who done it, who killed Tony Storm. And RJ City, who's a talented writer with AW, did a lot of great work with Tony Storm and Mariah May during their feud from 2024 to 2025. So if they're doing a lengthy storyline about who killed Tony Storm, I trust them to do it well. But Tony Storm reportedly out for the rest of 2026 at least. I was about to say that fucking sucks. What a brutal break, because Mercedes Moné she's a heel, but she's as big a star as Toni Storm, if not bigger, but she's a heel. There's no top babyface in the women's division who can replace Toni Storm right now. So I thought at first, oh man, that's so unfortunate. However, however, it was announced, well, it was reported that she's not injured while she's out for the year. And we all know what that means. She's climbing Mount Everest. No, she's not Darby Allin. Maybe not be may not be fair to speculate, but it appears that Toni Storm will have a mini timeless Toni Storm popping out. At least that's the guess that's going around. She may be pregnant. She's I believe married to Juice Robinson. They're at least together. I think they're married. So if Toni Storm's welcoming a mini timeless one to the world, congratulations, Toni. Cannot wait to see you back in 2027 and safe pregnancy and safe delivery as well. So that is unfortunate, though, in the case of who is ready to take Toni's spot right now as the top babyface and the top star of the AEW Women's Division. There's some options. Willow Nightingale is the AEW TBS champion right now, former tag team champion. Harley Cameron, well, she's improved a lot in the ring, not at the levels of Toni or Willow, but has been getting better and has a good personality. And Mina Shirakawa has a lot of charisma as well, the on-screen lover of Toni Storm. So I don't know what's going to happen here with that and the women's division in general, because I'm sure there's a lot of moving places. I thought that they were going to set up a program with Toni Storm challenging Tekla, maybe at Dynasty, or at the very least in the near future. But that's not the case now. And specifically about who's replacing Toni Storm, it felt like Mina Shirakawa was maybe getting that push at first, because the previous week on Dynamite, she defeats Marina Shafir in a no-holds-barred match. I thought that, okay, Mina Shirakawa hasn't been given a lot of wins lately, so this will be a way for Marina to get her win back. No, Mina won that match. A horrifying match, because Marina tried to give a back suplex to Mina Shirakawa through a table on the outside, misses the table entirely. Marina goes through the table while Mina just lands on the back of her head and her back to the outside mat. I screamed in horror. I was like, get this match over with. Just get to the finish. And then Mina kicked down like, oh my God. But then she won, so that made sense. So she got a women's championship match against Tekla the previous week on Dynamite. She lost due to shenanigans. I mean, Tekla hit her with the brass knucks. But she still lost, so it appears that feud may continue, because this last Saturday on Collision, the Brawling Birds, a great women's tag team, Megan Bayne and... No, that's the tag team champions, Lana Cross and Megan Bayne. But the Brawling Birds of Alex Windsor and Jamie Hayter, they beat some jobbers on this previous week's Collision, but the week before, they had a great match with the Sisters of Sin, Julia Hart, and Sky Blue, which are part of Tekla's group, the Triangle of Madness. I thought, great. They are in line to challenge for the tag team championships in the women's division. But apparently not. The Triangle of Madness comes out, Tekla, Sky Blue, and Julia Hart. Tekla just has all the charisma in the world. She's talking shit. Mina Shirakawa comes out, wants revenge still on Tekla. And so they're having a trios match this Wednesday on Dynamite. So it appears the Brawling Birds are not going for the AEW Women's World Tag Team Champions. But, you know, Mina Shirakawa and Tekla are still involved with each other. So I have no idea what's happening there. Speaking of the AEW Women's World Tag Team Champions right now, Megan Bayne and Lana Cross were successfully retained by defeating Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, the Babes of Wrath, the former champions. Really good match on Collision this last Saturday. And the Babes of Wrath have mutually parted ways. There's a really nice promo, actually, of after Harley and Willow lost, they're still friends, but they acknowledge, yeah, we had our chance. We didn't get the tag team titles back. Willow is still the TBS champion, the mid-card title in the women's division. And Harley said, you should focus on that. We'll always be the Babes of Wrath. So, you know what? if you have to break up, you can still be friends. That's a refreshing pace in the world of professional wrestling. So we got 2 weeks of Dynasty, so there's a lot of questions left to be answered. So we'll see what happens. But at least we got 3 huge matches. The main event, MJF defending the AW Men's World Championship against Kenny Omega. John Moxley taking on Will Ospreay. It doesn't appear that Mox's AW Continental Championship is on the line, at least for now. And then FTR defending the AW Men's World Tag Team Championships against Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. Other notes from AEW, Darby Allin is still expressing his desire to challenge for the AEW Men's World Championship. I'm not sure if he'll get a match. I know Dynamite is airing in Everett, Washington the week after Dynasty, which Darby's from the Seattle area. Or maybe Darby challenges the month afterwards at AEW Double or Nothing, that pay-per-view. So we'll see what happens, but Darby had an interesting couple of weeks. First, he had an awful casket match, I should say, with Gabe Kidd. That started with a parking lot brawl, and it was just a little bit too cartoony. Darby and Gabe are brawling the parking lot. I don't know what kind of liquid you call it. Let's just call it chloroform for lack of a better term. He has a liquid, he puts it into a rag, puts it over Gabe's mouth, makes him pass out, puts him in the trunk of a vehicle, intentionally flips it, and intentionally flips the vehicle. He carts out Gabe Kidd on, like, like those storage cases, like say if there's like a big concert or movie production or whatever, those moving crates or carts that carries storage. Gabe Kidd is being wheeled out on that, and there's a Mickey Mouse looking 8th grade woodshop looking casket as the casket in the casket match. And so you think, oh, okay, that's a weird way to do it, but Darby just killed Gabe basically. And then Gabe fights out of it. And then they're just having a match. And Darby tries to put Gabe Kidd in a straitjacket, but doesn't follow through with putting him in the straitjacket properly, like strapping him in there. And Gabe's heroically fighting back, and Gabe's the villain here. So Darby eventually wins. That was just a little bit too silly. So this last week, Darby has a no count out match with Roosh. So if you know Roosh, if you don't know Roosh, he's a famous wrestler from CMLL and AAA. Maybe not AAA, Ring of Honor for sure, but mostly known for his work in CMLL. His stuff looks cool. He's a very athletic brawler, but he does not like to do a lot of jobs. He doesn't like to lose a lot. So sometimes that limits on what you're able to do with Roosh. So in this match with Darby Allin, he's taken most of this match. Darby's taken all these crazy bumps, but Roosh loses via roll up. So I don't know. That's a way to protect him, I suppose. And then afterwards, the Don Callis family beats up Darby Allin. Mark Davis hits a pile driver on the stage because MJF wants the Don Callis family to take care of Darby Allin, make him go away. And he's giving Don Callis money for this. So it appears we're lining up with a Darby Allin, Don Callis family feud for now. And in the Don Callis family, I should say, Andrade may be hinting at a babyface turn here pretty quick because he does not want to work with MJF. So if Andrade turns babyface, that'd be cool because the fans like him. He's working really hard. And I still think it's him taking off his pants in the middle of matches, showing off the tights and all the work he's done on his legs, and taking selfies with women in the front row, making Andrade seem pretty cool. So yeah, I think we'll look at a babyface turn maybe sooner rather than later there. One more note from AEW this week. Kyle Fletcher appears to have suffered an injury. So I was watching Collision on the Saturday, and after the commercial break, I noticed that Kyle Fletcher was limping. I was like, why is he selling his leg there? So I guess during the commercial break, Kyle Fletcher was trying to do a suplex. Him and Mark Davis were teaming up to take on the Rascals on Collision. Kyle Fletcher's knee goes into the body of Mark Davis while he's carrying out a vertical suplex. I believe it was on Zachary Wentz. And Kyle Fletcher's foot gets jammed. Like his toe is digging into the center of the ring canvas, and he's falling backwards, and all of his weight, pardon me, looks like it goes right on his heel while his toe is digging into the canvas, and it looks like a foot injury of some sorts. And according to Brian Alvarez of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Kyle Fletcher left Collision in a walking boot. So hopefully that is a sprain or something more minor for Kyle Fletcher. An important figure right now in AEW. First of all, maybe the most outstanding wrestler in the world right now. Uh, revealed his intentions to eventually challenge MJF for the AEW Men's World Championship. He's the current TNT champion, an anchor in the mid-card scene right now, and he's part of a storyline with the potential future implosion of the Don Callis family, like how Konosuke Takeshita and Kazuchika Okada are still at each other's necks, and Fletcher has to be friends with both of them. So, get well soon, Kyle Fletcher. Hopefully, you're not away for too long. And one more point on Okada and Takeshita. Let's get it over with. I mean, I think we're doing some harm to Takeshita just having him lose and just this feud taking forever. It was the AEW World's End pay-per-view in December where Kazuchika Okada hit Takeshita with a screwdriver to win that semifinal match. It's been almost 4 months since, well, 3 months since, and we haven't really followed up on it. And Takeshita has lost and appears to be turning babyface in a very slow burn. And look, let's get the show on the road here and let Takeshita turn on the Don Callis family, because similarly to how Sami Zayn turned on the Bloodline in 2023, it wouldn't have worked if the Bloodline turned on Sami Zayn, because Sami Zayn looked like he had the better conscience and the foresight to turn on the Bloodline. Let's do the same thing here with Konosuke Takeshita to turn on the Don Callis family. And speaking of the Don Callis family, holy smokes, Ace and I said that the Vision in WWE is cursed. The Don Callis family may be super de-duper cursed. I mean, early on in the faction, years and years ago, you'd have guys like Sammy Guevara would miss a couple months, and then they'd kind of write him out of the Don Callis family. Same thing happened to Powerhouse Hobbs. But recently, I don't want to diminish their contributions, but on the lower end of the totem pole in the Don Callis family, they've had some injuries like Brian Cage and Jake Doyle, the former Jake something, recently. But now they've lost Kyle Fletcher, so the Don Callis family may be cursed for all we know, with all their injuries suffering there. Now to WWE. We've got a couple of new matches for WrestleMania 42 in Las Vegas, so we already touched on before. CM Punk is defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Roman Reigns. Stephanie Vaquer is challenging the WWE Women's World Championship against Liv Morgan. Cody Rhodes is defending the WWE Championship against Randy Orton. Jade Cargill is defending the WWE Women's Championship against Rhea Ripley. And Obafemi is taking on Brock Lesnar. So that's what we've touched on before. We've got 3 new matches now. AJ Lee defending the AEW Women's Intercontinental Championship against Becky Lynch. Sure, I don't know. I kind of like the segment a little bit at Elimination Chamber when AJ Lee defeated Becky Lynch to win the championship because it was in Chicago, her adopted hometown, because her husband CM Punk is famously from Chicago. The match itself wasn't good, so now they're just doing a rematch because it's time for a rematch, and I don't think AJ Lee will be any more better in the month or two following Elimination Chamber, and WrestleMania is not in Chicago. So I don't think they'll have as much heat for this one. Jacob Fatu taking on Drew McIntyre in an unsanctioned match. I got no problems with this. In fact, they brawled the previous week on SmackDown where they were brawling throughout the entire show and did a big dive off like a production truck to the outside. Both guys were selling their injuries this last Friday on SmackDown. Jacob has a really good promo saying Drew tried to steal food from his table, from his kid's table, by putting him out of action. Not just like with the attempt last week with the dive off the production truck, but still thinking that Drew McIntyre took him out of action months and months and months ago. And then Drew McIntyre also selling his injuries, saying, Jacob Fatu, you say I stole from you by doing something, doing a crime I didn't do, while you just do crimes. You stole my championship. You stole my main event. And yep, they're just having an unsanctioned match. These guys did a very good job. I've been very hard on Drew McIntyre over the last couple months. He did a good job here. And then finally, Sami Zayn will defend the WWE United States Championship against Trick Williams. Yeah, we got a new US champion. Sami Zayn answered the open challenge of Carmelo Hayes, won the US title on SmackDown. I don't know. It seems they were hinting at Sami Zayn versus Trick Williams at WrestleMania, despite Sami kind of still sort of being an antagonist in the Cody Rhodes Randy Orton feud. I don't know if this match needed the title, but if it's just to put Trick Williams over at WrestleMania, that makes sense. In storyline though, Sami Zayn going for the US Championship, I don't know, because the elusive title has been the WWE Championship. So it feels like a consolation prize here that he took. And of course, the finish of the match, Trick Williams hit Carmelo Hayes during a wires cross segment near the end of the match with Carmelo there. Sammy still takes advantage, so he's kind of going back on do the right thing that he's been preaching the last couple of weeks. So that makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for Sammy. They've again missed the peak on him to win the WWE Championship years ago. It is what it is. So if he puts over Trick Williams, yeah, it's probably for the greater good. I do feel bad for Carmelo Hayes, though. I mean, maybe that's why he and Ilya Dragunov had that fantastic match a week ago on SmackDown because Carmelo knew that he wasn't going to be having that match at WrestleMania. I don't know. So that's unfortunate. And also the last thing that doesn't really make sense with Sami Zayn here saying, I'm the US champion now. I gotta have my match. I gotta have my spot at WrestleMania. Sammy, this WrestleMania is 2 nights now. I know you weren't on WrestleMania last year, but there are two 4-hour shows. You, the listener, may wrestle me at WrestleMania. They need people to work this show. So, I don't know, that's silly to me, but 2 nights of WrestleMania, we now have 8 matches, so the card's starting to fill up with about 3 weeks to go. Gonna take a quick pause to have a drink of water. Bear with me for a second. We are back. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't miss Ace just for his fantastic wrestling takes, for his baritone voice, but also whenever he talks, I can have a drink of water, and I don't want to have my sipping sounds or opening the can over the microphone and wasting your time, the listener's time, as I ironically burp. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Anyways, yep, so, and we're not live, and I don't have a producer, so we're taking pauses. Anyway, back to WWE. So on Raw, the Usos are taking on Logan Paul and Austin Theory during the match. Logan Paul is trying to use the brass knuckles to get the win. LA Knight comes out, takes out Logan Paul on the outside. He throws the brass knuckles to Jey Uso, who then smacks Austin Theory at them for the disqualification. So now the Usos will defend the World Tag Team Championships next week on Raw, or I should say this Monday on Raw, because Logan Paul and Austin Theory won by disqualification. So this is a part of the big segment, the main event segment, involving CM Punk and Roman Reigns. So Jimmy Uso tells CM Punk backstage prior to his entrance to watch what he says because Jay is on a warpath. He's seen red. He's angry. And of course, this is after CM Punk talked about Roman Reigns' dad being dead. So CM Punk is doing his promo. He says that wrestlers typically say bad words to each other to sell a fight, to sell a pay-per-view because it's pro wrestling and you are trying to promote something. But mentions that Roman Reigns calling him old the week prior pissed him off because, well, not because he is old, but because Roman Reigns said it specifically, saying that he doesn't dye his gray hairs like Roman Reigns. Although looking at CM Punk's hair, I think he's had some other anti-aging measures, but who am I to say? And CM Punk says he's crazy, he's middle-aged, like Terry Funk. I will say it is funny that CM Punk is talking about how proud he is to be old after always going on about how old and out of touch guys in their 40s and older were during his first WWE stint a decade ago. Yeah, the CM Punk guy in character and in real life might be a giant hypocrite. Maybe that's why I'm not a big fan anymore, while acknowledging he still does good work. Back to the segment though, CM Punk says he's going to beat Roman up, says when Roman Reigns is gassed 20 minutes in. That was fucking funny. That's hilarious coming from CM Punk, whose character is he's old, and then you can see him get gassed up for real in matches. That was hilarious. And he says when Roman Reigns is gassed 20 minutes in and all the oil and jizz he covers himself in dries up. He did say jizz. That's his word, not mine. By the way, Netflix edited that jizz part out of the replay. I don't want to watch these shows live, but Netflix takes out the funniest parts or the most newsworthy parts sometimes. But after all that, CM Punk says Roman Reigns will realize he didn't get beat by an old man, he got beat by the old man. So Punk says Gunther, who, retired John Cena and AJ Styles and is still nowhere to be seen here in the biggest show of the year coming up in 3 weeks, he didn't underestimate CM Punk, and he still lost back at SummerSlam, and Jey Uso also didn't underestimate him, and he lost. Speaking of Jey Uso, he comes out, and CM Punk says, what is he gonna do? Yeet me to death? This is still the best CM Punk has been since returning to WWE, despite all the hypocrisies. I admit, he's on tear right now. CM Punk offers to defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Jey Uso right there, right now. Jimmy Uso comes out to interrupt, saying he's not talking to CM Punk. The Usos are not in the main event of WrestleMania, but I gotta say, they're doing a better job of making me want to see them take on CM Punk more than I want to see CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. To quote former Vancouver Canucks head coach John Tortorella when talking about David Booth being the best player on the Canucks one night back in like 2013-14, that's great for David Booth. That's not good for our hockey club. And that's good for the Usos. That's not good for WrestleMania. So Jimmy's saying that Jey is seeing red right now, and his anger is why they now have to defend the tag team championships against Austin Theory and Logan Paul next week. Jey says he doesn't care about the tag team championships right now. Great tag team division they got here in WWE. Jimmy tells Jey to leave Punk to Roman, and Jey correctly asks, where is Roman? Roman then comes out, and he's not even aura farming. He just comes down to the ring. He's getting slightly more serious after CM Punk talked about his dead father 3 weeks ahead of WrestleMania, so that's a tiny step. Roman tells Jimmy respectively to get Jey and leave. Punk tells the Usos to stay because Roman needs the backup. Jey goes after Punk but gets knocked down, and during a struggle with Jimmy, Punk gets Superman punched by Roman. Roman then spears Punk after Jey tells Roman to get him. Roman then rams Punk's head into the post a few times and then powerbombs him through a table. Both Roman Reigns and CM Punk are wearing white during the segment, and anytime both men are wearing white, chances are someone's bleeding, because if someone's gonna bleed, you gotta get your money's worth and get the bloodstains in, you know? But nobody bleeds here on this show, so they're leaving money on the table there. These fans still love them some Roman Reigns, though. They're chanting OTC, OTC. And the show ends with Punk cackling like Heath Ledger's Joker to end the show because he's in Roman Reigns' mind. This was a lot better than the previous week's involving Punk and Roman. However, Roman almost ruined all of this by going on to Jimmy Fallon this week and calling CM Punk old again. I don't know. I remember when this match got made official after the Royal Rumble and Roman challenging CM Punk, the Raw after the Royal Rumble, when this feud was centered around Roman hating CM Punk and CM Punk treating Roman like his young boy. That feud was much more intriguing than saying, "You're old." But what do I know? Elsewhere on Raw, Obafemi lays out Brock Lesnar with a lariat on the outside of the ring to continue the build to that match. There are still questions about who Seth Rollins will face at WrestleMania. I'm sure there's hoping and praying that Braun Breaker is good to go and is healthy by then. And Penta retains the Intercontinental Championship by defeating Dominic Mysterio. Finn Balor versus Dom is still not official yet. I imagine that will happen at WrestleMania though. And Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Vaquer is an afterthought. I don't know. Going to SmackDown, and this show, I kind of given my opinion on WWE since the beginning of Cup Check Wrestling about how I've really despised this company over the last couple of years, specifically on a moral reason in terms of just like their price gouging and their reaction to the Janelle Grant lawsuit against WWE and Vince McMahon and just the overall arrogance they've shown, like in counter programming AEW among other things. This, like, I've ranted a lot. I don't want to be grumpy McCranky pants. This show, though, made me realize let's just not even think about wrestling alone, just like other sports and entertainment, you know? This last weekend was opening weekend basically for Major League Baseball. Our Toronto Blue Jays are back at it. You can see them just about every day. That's 3 hours. We've got the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs coming up. And then even just in pro wrestling, it's not even just about AEW or WWE or our wonderful independent promotions in BC. There's so much wrestling at our fingertips all over the world. I still haven't seen the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling Ring of Honor Global Wars show that took place over the weekend. CMLL apparently had a really good Friday show that had Claudio Castagnoli defending the CMLL World Heavyweight Championship against Hechicero. That was a fantastic match. John Moxley and the Death Riders taking on Mystico and El Sky Team in the trios match. There's a huge retirement match as well. I haven't had a chance to see that show yet. New Japan Pro Wrestling wrapped up the I think it's the New Japan Cup that they call that tournament. Basically, these two young up and coming stars, Callum Newman and Yuya Uemura, had a tremendous finals that is leading to Callum Newman, this young 23-year-old fresh face, challenging for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship against Yota Tsuji, another member of this new face of New Japan Pro Wrestling, at the upcoming Sakura Genesis show. I haven't had a chance to watch the semifinals or the finals of the New Japan Cup yet. And here I am watching this SmackDown show. And why did I hate this SmackDown show? Let's get into it. So the show opens up, Randy Orton is coming out, and he does the each and every single one of you promo, where it's because of you fans that I'm a bad guy and mean now. Because Randy Orton turned on Cody Rhodes ahead of their WWE Championship match at WrestleMania. So Randy Orton saying it's the fans' voices outside of his head that's the problem. And he says there's one voice he's listening to, and it's the person he's been shown on camera talking to over the phone. My best guess at who this might be is Arn Anderson, famously with the Four Horsemen and Jim Crockett Promotions and WCW. Mentor to Cody Rhodes on screen on AEW and WWE TV. I'm sure Arn is available for that. Deep down, I think WWE would love The Rock to be free for that. But we will see. Anyways, Matt Cardona comes out and attacks Randy Orton with a microphone after Orton started talking shit to Cardona, threatening to break his other arm, yada, 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 as Cardona's coming down the stage because the previous week, Orton Pillmanized the arm of Matt Cardona, breaking his arm apparently, or breaking his wrist or whatever. Even though Matt Cardona doesn't come out in a cast, it's like the wrap that you use if you have like carpal tunnel, for example. That's what it looks like Matt Cardona has here. Anyways, Randy Orton is cheered during this. This despicable heel is still beloved and cheered. Yeah. Here's another thing that just bothered me about this show. Rhea Ripley, she's challenging Jade Cargill for the WWE Women's Championship at WrestleMania. She comes out and does the generic promo to end all generic promos. She just comes out and says, like, no one is gonna stop me at WrestleMania. And so Jade and her baddies come out, going back and forth with Rhea. They're all interrupting each other. It leads to a match with Jade and B-Fab. And then eventually Jade and the baddies just all beat up Rhea. And that's that segment. I know the plan was probably, if she's healthy, Bianca Belair was probably going to challenge Jade Cargill in this match. Even if Bianca was healthy in this hypothetical scenario, was this plan A? Was this the plan? Was this how the story would have presented on itself on TV? This is something that this is someone who's doing be a GM mode on the old SmackDown versus Raw games. They wouldn't make anything this generic. And yeah, I don't know. Now, I know I took a pause for myself to take a drink of water, but I can't help but pause now just to help me compose myself. This segment, or this upcoming segment here, I've said before I'm watching WWE again for the purposes of this podcast because even though I'm not the biggest WWE fan right now, it is still the number one promotion in the world. Anyone who's listening to this podcast is probably following along to WWE for the most part, so I want to be tuned in for the listeners' sake. So I know what I'm talking about. This segment made me want to quit all over again. So it's Kit Wilson taking on Jelly Roll. Before the match, though, Danhausen curses Kit Wilson. Uh, Danhausen has bounced back since that all-time terrible debut at Elimination Chamber, that hysterically, comically bad debut. So good for him. So it's Kit Wilson taking on Jelly Roll. Jelly, it looks like he's in his street clothes, and he's gonna be in a match. And Kit Wilson does some more slam poetry at the start of the match. Now, here's the thing. I understand Jelly Roll has been training, and wrestling is really, really hard. It is tough. It's a tough dance that requires a lot of cooperation to get through a match and for that to make it look good. And I always appreciate when a celebrity is trying their best at pro wrestling and that they don't look down upon it. So I understand Jelly Roll is training and he's working really hard, so I want to give him props for that one. That being said, oh my God, his offense and selling is just not good enough for this stage. It just isn't. This is on national TV in the United States and is airing on Netflix all over the world. WWE is the number one promotion in the world, and Jelly Roll's offense and the selling is just nowhere near good enough. This is not even good enough for NXT. This is not good enough for Evolve. This isn't good for a house show, quite frankly. If Jelly Roll was going to start on the Indies, I mean, you got to start somewhere, but this is just nowhere near good enough, quite frankly. Kit is basically trying to work a miracle out there to get a match out of this Jelly Roll guy. So Kit Wilson hits his turn E Kit, which is basically the twist of fate that the Hardys would do. Jelly Roll kicks out. He just kicks out Kit Wilson's move. The country singer, who I think has had one tag team match, has just been training, kicks out of a signature move from a full-time WWE talent. So Jelly Roll Irish whips Kit into the turnbuckle. He's ass over kettle. Jelly hits a chokeslam and wins. Jelly Roll, the country music singer, beats Kit Wilson, this veteran who's prominently featured on WWE TV, the number one promotion in the world, like the equivalent of the NHL, the NFL, the NBA of pro wrestling. Jelly Roll wins. Where do I even begin? Where do I even fucking begin? I wish I had Ace here. Not to talk me off the ledge, but he'll appreciate this. Well, maybe not appreciate it, but he'll understand this reference. So, do you remember back in 2020, all my hockey fans who are listening out there, do you remember in 2020 where the Carolina Hurricanes beat the Toronto Maple Leafs and there was the 46-year-old Zamboni driver who worked for the Leafs, who was the emergency backup goaltender for the Carolina Hurricanes, and he gets thrust into action in like the third period, and he doesn't give up a goal, and the Hurricanes get a win in Toronto against the Maple Leafs with a Zamboni driver who works for the team. He's in his 40s, and he, as the emergency backup goaltender, he wins an NHL game. I don't remember the exact report, so well, I kind of do. I had the hate recorder going on up in this old noggin of mine. Like, I'll always remember this example for as long as I live. So I'm paraphrasing, but basically, Elliot Friedman, who's like the number one insider in hockey right now, he said that Gary Bettman, the NHL commissioner, was looking at changes to the NHL's emergency backup goaltender situation because of the Zamboni driver winning an NHL game. The rationale was the league did not want to make it look like anyone can just pop in, be a goaltender, and win an honest to God NHL game. Even if the Zamboni driver was a goalie way once upon a time, you just can't be a Zamboni driver and then fucking win an NHL game. That shouldn't happen. You don't want to have like your buddy at the bar say, "Oh, I played hockey, I could go in there and win a game against the Leafs." I'll always remember that example. So look, I know that celebrities have been involved in wrestling before my time, before I was on this planet. The main event of the first WrestleMania was Mr. T teaming up with Hulk Hogan. I am okay with celebrities in wrestling. I'm okay with celebrities winning in wrestling. For example, I had to draw this down because I'm okay with celebrities winning in pro wrestling for the most part because there's smoke and mirrors involved. Floyd Mayweather at WrestleMania 24 was challenging the Big Show. It was the greatest athlete in the world versus the largest athlete in the world, is how it was billed as. But there's no disqualification. Mayweather hits Big Show with a steel chair. He punches him with brass knuckles, and that's how he's able to win. Let's go even further. My sister-in-law, for example, she's at points gone into some portions of wrestling throughout her marriage to my brother, but she told me one time after WrestleMania 30, was it 38? It was the one in Dallas in 2022. She said, "I will never forget Sami Zayn and Johnny Knoxville because, of course, Sami Zayn is a pro wrestler and Johnny Knoxville is just the jackass guy. But Johnny Knoxville beats Sami Zayn with all the jackass props and all his jackass friends helping him. He wins with smoke and mirrors." Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny is a huge wrestling fan, and he's athletic too. And I believe he halted his tour just so he could train to do matches, not just at WrestleMania in 2021, but when WWE had a show in Puerto Rico, he had a street fight with Damian Priest, and there was a lot of smoke and mirrors. Bad Bunny defeated Damian Priest in his home territory of Puerto Rico, but there was some smoke and mirrors involved. Logan Paul is at least an athlete. Logan Paul is eons better than Jelly Roll. In AEW, I think the only one-on-one win Big Boom AJ has had was against QT Marshall on a pre-show. I still think that Big Justice, his son, had to spear QT Marshall. Even that took smoke and mirrors. Or even earlier in AW, Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet were taking on Shaquille O'Neal and Jade Cargill on an episode of Dynamite. Cody was selling for Shaq, but guess what? He's fucking Shaq. He's got a foot and 100 pounds on Cody Rhodes. At least. You can suspend your disbelief for that. Jelly Roll, Jelly Roll in his street clothes, down significantly from his weight years ago, who's not an athlete, he outmaneuvered and outgrappled a WWE wrestler in a one-on-one match and won. Kit Wilson, again, who's a seasoned pro, has been prominently featured on WWE for years, on NXT for years. Jelly Roll outgrappled him and won. Jelly Roll did the WWE equivalent of the Zamboni driver beating the Toronto Maple Leafs. Made a mockery of pro wrestling. Like, you know what? There's segments where Vince McMahon, who lost his mind in the late 2000s, where some segments would pop on and you're just watching wrestling in the living room and you're just praying on a stack of Bibles that no one walks in and catches you watching some of the worst shit you'll ever see on TV. This made a mockery of this pro wrestling business. That you could be someone like Jelly Roll, who's just training, not really impressive at all, and you, with some training and one tag team match, can win a match in the NFL, the NHL of pro wrestling. This is why, say, if we have friends like that kind of look down at the hokiness of pro wrestling, shit like this is because of it. This sucked. I truly hated this, and I was ready to just stop the show. I was ready to quit. I may ask Ace if there's a way where he can work out an arrangement where he can watch all the WWE for the both of us, he can report on it, and just let me free. I'm gonna give it a raw. I'm gonna give it a couple days to calm myself down, but I hated that segment. And what I thought was this fun statement from Kenny Omega, I think it was last year. So, Kenny Omega, like last year, said, with all the social media influencers being involved in pro wrestling, he said, we're probably not that far off from Logan Paul taking on Mr. Beast in the main event of WrestleMania. And you can kind of laugh at it, but these SmackDown fans cheered for Jelly Roll winning on SmackDown. This company is not for me. It's just not. Now let's mercifully end SmackDown here. Randy Orton's taking on Matt Cardona in the main event, so Cardona enters the ring. Randy Orton's just stomping on him right away. He's working on Cardona's wrist by slamming it on the announce table. A few minutes pass, and Orton takes off Cardona's carpal tunnel wrap and works the wrist. Eventually hits the RKO and wins. It takes Orton longer to cover Cardona here than it took Triple H to cover Booker T at WrestleMania 19 way back when. I'm only half kidding. So Cody Rhodes comes in with his bus, the one that costs just under $10,000 to tour at WrestleMania Access. Cody arrives, he's walking backstage, and someone is walking out of the washroom in the background, and he waves his hand in front of his face as to say, P.U. I just took a big old dump in that bathroom. Perfect symbolism for this show. So Cody and Randy are brawling. Security and backstage agents are trying to break them apart. Jelly Roll, the main character in this main event of WrestleMania, this storyline, he's out there now, and Randy Orton RKO's Jelly Roll to end the show. And again, celebrities in wrestling predate me. In fact, at the time, the most successful wrestling pay-per-view of all time was WrestleMania 23. The hook was the Battle of the Billionaires storyline. Vince McMahon and Donald Trump each had representatives in this match, and whoever lost would have to get their head shaved bald. That was the most successful pay-per-view in pro wrestling up until John Cena versus The Rock at WrestleMania like 5 years later. So there's a role for celebrities in wrestling. I'm not trying to say there isn't. I'm okay with celebrities getting wins in wrestling because a lot of times there's smoke and mirrors in their wins. So I'm not opposed to wrestlers winning. I'm not opposed to wrestlers being in huge angles. Jelly Roll is the main catalyst in this main event scene with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. These guys legitimately have 20 years of history, and the focal point is fucking Jelly Roll. And Jelly Roll won a match. This company's not for me, man. It's just not. It's just not. So that was SmackDown. That was WWE this week. I hope I can find some time to watch CMLL and New Japan and Maple Leaf Pro, clean my palate, and hopefully, look, I know I'm gonna be watching WWE for this purpose of this podcast. I'm aware of that. I don't have to like it though. So, and I hope that for WWE's sakes, this road to WrestleMania gets better, and overall their TV gets better, and overall they start acting better because if I have to watch it, I want it to be good. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, this has been tough sledding for me and me alone. And if you are enjoying it, great. This is just my opinion. I'm happy if you can find something, you can find joy out of something that I can't, quite frankly. You know? So, I mean, they're still doing gangbusters business. I mean, I know WrestleMania for both nights, I think the attendance is under 40,000 for both. And they're using a lot of deals like 25% off and 31% off to sell some of these upcoming shows. But WrestleMania is still a huge financial success. So clearly they're doing something right. But you know what? Just if it works for business, artistically, from my perspective, it doesn't mean I don't have to like it. So I apologize for being grumpy McCranky pants here, but this show and these last couple of weeks, but Jelly Roll specifically has kind of pushed me over an edge. So I don't know. We need Ace here more than I need my glasses and more than I need sleep, quite frankly. So if you're still here, thank you so much. This is the first time I've done a solo show. First time any of us have done either of us or me and Ace have done a solo show. So thanks for sticking with me so far. I'm looking forward to bringing Ace back. We're aiming to get back Thursday. I think that's April. Is that April? Yeah, Thursday, April 2nd. Hopefully, we'll be back here to talk about some of the week that was, and then we'll be back here the following Sunday, Easter Sunday, to talk more of the week that was, and just to expect maybe more weeks of having two smaller shows rather than one huge marathon show. So we'll still keep you in the loop. So this Thursday, in the meantime, we'll have our regular old lore and catch up time. Ace will talk about his experience at VIPW in Nanaimo. We'll have Monday Night Raw, Wednesday Dynamite, and the rest of the news cycle and the week that was in the world of pro wrestling. So in the meantime, I am Aaron Schultz. I miss Corey Ace Trelaw so much. Thanks for sticking with me. This is Cup Check Wrestling, where the big boys play with each other. I can't even stop recording right. Where the big boys play with each other.